everyone, this is Sandra of Nomad Stitches and this is the Bougainvillea tutorial. Now before we start, let me tell you a little bit about this top and why I love it so much. First of all, the construction is really simple, super easy to make, but also very flattering and super comfortable to wear. So it has loads of positive ease and it feels like you're wearing like this huge skirt on you, and you know, you don't have to worry about sucking your tummy in or whatever, because it doesn't show any of that, and it just makes you feel beautiful and comfortable and proud of yourself because you've made it. Anyway, the inspiration behind it is these Mexican garments called huipiles, and I'm going to put a picture over here for you, that have loads of embroidery around them. And that was kind of what I was going for, but I didn't want to go too crazy, so I only put a little bit of embroidery on it. I hope you like it. I'm really in love with it. In today's tutorial, I will go over the whole construction from the beginning all the way to the end. The embroidery tutorial is separate, so if you want to embroider your garment, please head to the link that I'm going to put over here for you and in the description as well. Now let's talk a little bit about the construction of this top. It starts by the yoke. It is a rectangle and you increase on every row at the four corners of it. And then after you finish your yoke on the right side, you start with the front and you work it a little bit. And then you cut and go to the back and work the back slightly longer than the front. And then you join them at the underarm. Most sizes have a chain at the underarm, but not all of the sizes. And then after that, you work the body in a 2-row repeat as long as you want. So super simple, very fun to make. And I hope that this step-by-step guide will help you complete it. If you're a little bit scared about making a garment for the first time, then I hope that this helps you feel more confident. I made a tiny little design, a tiny little bougainvilleas to help you out because I didn't want to make a big one. So this is the sample that I've made for this tutorial. Obviously it doesn't look like this worn, but it's the same idea. So hopefully that will help you understand how it works. And yeah, I hope you love your Bougainvillea top, and remember that if you have any questions, you can always email me. My email is on the pattern, or you can contact me through the website. If you are here, it's probably because you've bought the pattern, so thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for buying my patterns. Thank you so much for following me on Instagram or YouTube, and if you don't yet, then please subscribe and like this video. Alright guys, well, let's get started with your Bougainvillea's top. We will start with a crochet cord. If you don't know how to make one, please head to the link above to learn how to make one. These little loops at the top are the stitch loops. Those are the ones that we are going to join to work in the round. Insert your hook on that very first stitch and make a slip stitch to join the round. Tighten it to make the join invisible. Chain one and tighten that one too to make the join even more invisible. This is something that we will do throughout. If you want to learn more about this technique, please head to the video that I've linked above. You're going to use scrap pieces of yarn as markers. I have 4 right there. These are the ones that I'm going to use. You're going to work on the back loop only. There are 3 loops. The one at the very farthest from you, that is the back loop. Single crochet until indicated. Then for the increase, you will single crochet 1, On the second stitch of the increase, you will place your marker. Make sure that your marker is above your working yarn so that it stays inside your stitch, marking that stitch. Then make a third stitch into that same place. There it is. Continue to single crochet until the next indicated stitch for the following increase. In this case, it's going to be right there. Single crochet 1, place your marker, single crochet again. As you can see, the marker stays inside the stitch to mark it. Repeat this around. Using these kinds of markers are much better than using regular markers because you can pass them from one row to the next. On the following row, I will show you how I pass these markers along so that it's an easier and simpler process than having to remove and attach a new marker every single time. When you reach the end of the round, you will simply slip stitch on that very first stitch. And just like you did before, pull to tighten it to keep that seam invisible. Chain 1 and pull to tighten that one. That chain is a turning chain and it does not count as a stitch. That is your setup round. On your next row, you're going to turn your work to work on the wrong side. You've already done your turning chain, which you tighten to make the seam invisible. So you're going to start working on the very first stitch. Do not skip that first stitch. Then you're going to work to the marker and do another increase just like you did on the previous row. Single crochet 1, then pass your marker on top of your working yarn to mark the middle stitch of the increase, and then single crochet again in that same stitch. Did you see how easy it was to mark that stitch? You are now going to repeat that process at every corner. So single crochet to the marker, then increase 2 at the marked stitch, making sure to mark the middle stitch. And you're going to repeat that 4 times around. When you reach the end of the round, it is very easy to skip the last stitch because that's where you worked the slip stitch on the previous round. You see how tiny it is? So do make sure to not skip that stitch and work it. Then after working that last stitch, you're going to slip stitch on that very first stitch of your round. And once again, pull to tighten to make that join invisible. And then you continue with the next round, repeating the same over and over again, making sure that you turn at the end of every round. So just like before, we do not want to skip any stitches. We do not want to make another turning chain because we have already done a turning chain which got tightened in the joint. And we repeat the process. Single crochet to the corner, increase 2 at the corner where the marker is, and then single crochet again to the next corner, etc., etc., making sure to always mark the middle stitch of the increase to continue increasing there on following rounds. You will continue repeating this process until your yoke reaches the right measurement for your size, and then you will move on to the front. Remember to always turn at the end of your round and use the invisible join technique. If you would like to know more about this technique, please make sure to visit the link that I have attached to this video at the top. When you finish the last row of your yoke, you're going to fasten off after joining the round and cut your yarn. Your yoke will now look something like this, but obviously a lot bigger, of course. The side where the tail is the back, and the other side is the front. You will now start working at this corner of the front. The next row, which is the setup row of the lace, will look very differently for different sizes. Right now, I will show you sizes 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you are making any of the other sizes, you will start the same way, but the shells will look a little different. Start by attaching your yarn to that very corner stitch at the front. Make sure you are on the right side. Single crochet on that first stitch. Then skip 2 stitches and work on the next stitch 5 double crochets. You have now made a 5 double crochet shell. Then skip 2 more stitches and single crochet on the next stitch. You're going to repeat that all the way until the end of the round. Sizes 5 through 9 will look a little differently. You will start the same way by attaching your yarn at the corner and then making a single crochet on that very first stitch. However, you will skip 1 stitch and work your 5 double crochet shell on the next stitch. So instead of skipping 2 stitches like the other sizes did, you will only skip 1 stitch. When you have completed your shell, you will skip 1 stitch and single crochet on the next stitch. And this is what you will repeat until the end of the row. When you have finished all of your shells, you will finish with a single crochet in the other corner stitch. At this point and from now on, all sizes will look the same. The only difference is the skip stitches when you work that setup round. For your following row, you're going to chain 2, then double crochet on that very first stitch, which is the last one of the previous row. Chain 1 and double crochet again in that same stitch. Then you're going to chain 3 and work what I call an extended V-stitch on the following single crochet stitch, skipping the shell before it. So for the extended V-stitch, you're going to work a double crochet, then chain 3, and then another double crochet. And you're going to work one of those at every single crochet in between shells. You will repeat the chain and the extended V-stitch until the single crochet before the last shell of the row. When you get there, you will chain 3, skip the last shell, and then make a double crochet on that very last stitch, chain 1, and make a double crochet again in that same stitch. And this is the second row. You have the V-stitches in between the shells, and you have chains that go over the shells by skipping them. The following row is a shell row. So you're going to chain 2 and start working on that very first stitch. Make a double crochet. And then you're going to make 3 double crochets in that chain 1 space. These 4 stitches count as a half 7 double crochet shell. You are now going to work on the middle of the shell stitch and make a single crochet there. At the same time, you will wrap the chain loop that's above the shell inside that single crochet to keep it nice and tucked. This is a 5 double crochet shell, so the middle stitch is the 3rd stitch. On 7 double crochet shells, the middle stitch is the 4th one, and on 9 double crochet shells, the middle stitch is the 5th one. You are now going to make 7 double crochets inside the chain 3 space of the extended V-stitch. This will create a 7 double crochet shell. You will now repeat the process of single crocheting on the middle of shell stitch and then making a shell in the next extended V-stitch until the end of the row. So after having worked a shell in the last extended V-stitch, you will work a single crochet on the last middle of shell stitch, making sure you wrap the chain space above it. And then you're going to work a half 7 double crochet shell in that last chain 1 loop. So 3 double crochets in the chain 1 space and then 1 double crochet in the last stitch. In this round, you have half of shells on the ends, which count as 1, and then shells in between. For sizes 1, 2, 3, and 4, the front finishes here, so you will fast enough cut and skip ahead to the back. Sizes 5 through 9 have a few more rows to go at the front, but this will look exactly the same at the back. So repeat what you did at the front on this side, starting at this corner over here, by attaching your yarn. This is the way it would look at the back, the same as the front. You can now remove the markers if you wish to make your work easier. Now you will work the next row. So you will chain 1 as a turning chain, single crochet in the first stitch, chain 2, and make an extended V-stitch in that single crochet. You will continue making V-stitches in between the shells. Chain 4 and make another V-stitch in that next single crochet and repeat that until the end of the row. After your last extended V-stitch, you will chain 2 and single crochet in the last stitch of the row. And then just like we did before, we will do shells in the extended V-stitches. So you start with a single crochet in the first stitch and then make a 9 double crochet shell in that extended V-stitch. And just like before, you will single crochet in the MOS stitch of the next shell, making sure to wrap the loop above that shell. And repeat that until the end of the row. This is the way it will look with shells inside every extended V-stitch. And then on that very end of the row, you will simply single crochet on the last stitch. For the following row, you will work extended V-stitches and chains in between the extended V-stitches. And this will look basically exactly the same as row 2, except that instead of chaining 3 in between V-stitches, you will be chaining 4. At the end of the row, you will have 2 half V-stitches at each end, and then V-stitches in between the shells, which is where you are going to work shells in the following row. And just like before, we repeated row 2. This is basically a repeat of row 3, but we're using 9 double crochet shells instead of what we did before, which was 7 double crochet shells. At this point, the front will always be shorter than the back in all of the sizes. Now you're going to join the front and the back at the underarm. Most sizes will have chains to join them, but not all sizes. So make sure to follow the instructions that correspond to your size. You will start by working the following row on the wrong side of the back. You will work all the way to the end of the back, then do the underarm, work the front, and then finally the other underarm to join to the back. After your turning chain, you will chain 2 more and skip that first half shell. Then you will go ahead and do your extended V-stitch in the next single crochet, chain 4, and skip the next shell, just like you did before. When you reach the last extended V-stitch, you will chain 2 and then make a single crochet 2 together, where you join the last stitch of the back and the first stitch of the front. So you will insert your hook into the last stitch of the back, pull your yarn through, then insert your hook into the first stitch of the front, pull your yarn through again, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. This is the underarm. And then continue ahead, repeating what you were doing on the back, but on the front. So chain 2 and extended V-stitch in the next single crochet. Then chain 4, skip the shell, and make another V-stitch in the next single crochet. And repeat that until the end of the row. When you reach the last V-stitch, you are going to chain 2 and then make another single crochet 2 together to join the last stitch of the front to the very first stitch of the back. So insert your hook on the last stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then insert your hook to the first stitch of the previous row. You skipped it at the beginning, you haven't worked on it yet. And you're going to wrap that chain loop that you did at the beginning with the turning chain inside the stitch. Pull through all 3 loops on your hook to make a single crochet 2 together. And then you are going to join your round in that second chain. It might be a little tricky to get in there, but you can do it. Make a slip stitch to join the round, pull to tighten it, and then chain 1 and pull to tighten it as well. And you have now joined the front to the back to work on the body. For the next row, you are going to chain 1 more to have 2 turning chains, and then you are going to turn your work to work on the right side. Now skip the single crochet 2 together you made on the last row and go ahead into that extended V-stitch and make a 9 double crochet shell. Then, just like you've done before, you're going to single crochet in the middle of shell stitch, making sure to wrap inside the stitch that chain loop that is above. And then continue repeating that process in each extended V-stitch until you reach the next underarm. After you work your last shell in this section, you're going to work a single crochet in that underarm stitch, which was the single crochet 2 together you did on the previous row. And then continue making shells in each of the extended V-stitches until you reach where you started. And just like on the other underarm, you are going to single crochet into that single crochet 2 together that is at the underarm, making sure that you wrap inside your stitch that turning chain and beginning chain of the row. And then you're going to join the round in that first double crochet stitch of your 9 double crochet shell. Pull the slip stitch to tighten, chain 1, and tighten that turning chain as well. And then turn your work to work the next row on the wrong side. So this is how size 5 joins the body at the underarm. Now let's do the other sizes. You will also start on the wrong side of the back by working along the back on the wrong side, then joining at the underarm to the front, and then joining the front to the back again through the underarm. So to start, you're going to chain 1 as your turning chain, then make a single crochet on that very first stitch, chain 2, and then make an extended V-stitch in that very first single crochet stitch. And then continue like you did in the past, where you chain 4, skip a shell, and make an extended V-stitch in the single crochet after that. Repeat until the end of the row. When you reach the end of the row, you will simply single crochet in that last stitch of the row, and then make a chain for your underarm before joining to the front. And then single crochet in that first stitch of the front. And now you must repeat what you did at the back. So chain 2 and then extended V-stitch in the single crochet, chain 4, extended V-stitch, and repeat to the end of the row. Once you reach the end of the front, you will do what you did on the last underarm. So single crochet on that last stitch, then do your chain for the underarm, and then you will join on that very first stitch with a slip stitch to close your round. Tighten that slip stitch to keep the seam invisible, as well as the first chain of your turning chain. Now turn your work to do the next row on the right side. You will start at the chain. Skip 1 chain, and in the next chain, make a 9 double crochet shell. Skip 1 chain, and make a single crochet in the next stitch. Skip one more chain and then make one more 9 double crochet shell in the next chain. You will continue making shells and skipping stitches until the end of your chain. This chain can be different lengths for different sizes. You will then skip the last chain and join to that next single crochet, which is the first one attached to the body and not at the underarm, and single crochet one. And then continue making shells in the extended V stitches and single crocheting at the MOS stitch. When you reach the next underarm, you will repeat what you previously did in the other underarm. So skip one, 9 double crochet shell, skip one, single crochet, all the way until you reach the other side of the underarm, where you will single crochet on the first stitch of the next section. And repeat what you did in the previous section with the shells in the extended V stitches and the single crochets on the MOS stitches. Once you reach where you first started, you will single crochet on that last stitch of the row, and then join your round with a slip stitch on the first double crochet from that first shell. Tighten the slip stitch as well as the chain 1 of the turning chain. And that's it, you have joined your body. And now that the yoke has been completed, the rest of the body is done repeating a pattern of 2 rows, which is basically the same thing. So I'm going to show you how we start the rows and finish the rows. So I finished on a shell row, so the next one is going to be one of the chain rows. So I'm going to chain 1, double crochet 1 into this very first stitch, and then I will chain 4 and do my extended V stitch on that next single crochet. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Okay, now I am at the last shell before the end of the row. So this is the first double crochet that I made. So I'm going to make my 4 chains that I've just done now. And I'm going to double crochet into this stitch where that first double crochet was made. So I have to go over that first turning chain, and I'm going to stick my hook in there and make a double crochet there. So these 2 double crochets are going to become an extended V stitch, just like the others. I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to slip stitch and join to that very first stitch. And then I'm going to chain 1 as part of my join. And there you go. That's how you start and finish the chain rows. Now for the shell rows, I'm going to chain 1 more. So that's a total of 2 chains. And I'm going to start working into this very first loop from my extended V stitch. Now I am on the right side now. Remember, all chain rows are done on the wrong side, while all shell rows are done on the right side. And I'm just going to work my shells into the extended V stitches. And then, just like before, I'm going to work on the middle of shell stitch and wrap around the chain loop. I'm going to repeat that all around, and then I'll show you how to join this row.
This is the final shell of the round, and I'm going to do the final MOS stitch of the round too, the final middle of shell stitch. And now that I've done my single crochet, I'm just going to join with a slip stitch onto that very first stitch from the first shell, slip stitch and tighten, and then chain one and tighten, and that's it. Then I turn, chain one, and start all over again with my next row, which is a repeat of the previous row. And that's it. Next, I'm going to show you how to do the edgings around the sleeves and around the neckline, but I'm going to do that on the sample. I will start with the neckline edging. So this one I will do at the back, and I will start around the middle. It doesn't have to be exact, as long as it's close to the middle. And we're going to go over the whole 2 loops. So you see how the crochet cord, let me get closer, has 2 loops that are visible. If you like your edging like this, which looks really, really nice, you can leave it as is. I want to make it a little bit more cinched, especially because the yarn that I'm using gets a little bit loose because it's 100% bamboo. So I'm going to be doing an edging, but you don't have to do it at all if you don't want to. And in order to cinch it a bit more, I'm going to go down a hook size to a 4mm hook actually. Alright, and I'm going to attach my yarn, and then chain 1, and then we're going to do 1, 2, and 3 single crochets, and then a single crochet with a picot edging. Now a single crochet with picot means I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3, and I like working my picot inside the single crochet. So I pick up the top front loop, and I like to go inside this loop on the stitch. So I'm going to show you one more time. So you see how the stitch is there? I go into this loop and that side loop. So I go into this one first, and then I go into this one. You don't have to do it like this, but I always find that it looks very, very neat when I do that. I pull through my stitch, and then I pull through my loop to do a sort of slip stitch, and that's it. And then I continue. 1, 2, 3 single crochet with picot. You can start seeing the little bumps that form, and they're very, very cute. Okay, so here you can see the corner stitch. Now this one is very important because it indicates us where we need to stop. So we need to stop 1 stitch before the corner, which is this one. So right now I am 1, 2, and 3. So I am going to stop there, and I'm not going to be able to do my picot there, but that's all right. I can make it after my stitch. So now I'm going to do a single crochet 2 together, skipping the middle stitch. So I'm going to go into the first stitch, insert my hook, pull through. Now I'm going to skip the middle stitch and go into the next stitch, insert my hook, pull through. And now that I have 3 loops on my hook, I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now I have decreased 2 stitches. It's a little holey in there, but it's okay. That's gonna close off later on. And then I continue. Since I did a picot there and I have so many stitches in between, maybe you want to do the picot there, maybe not, maybe you want to keep going. It's up to you. You might not have the exact same number of stitches, and that's all right. So I'm going to do it in this stitch.
And then I will continue going around making single crochets and then single crochet with picot, followed by a single crochet 2 together at the corners to close off the neckline a little bit.
All right, so now I've gone all the way around, and I'm just going to join my round by slip stitching on the very first stitch and tightening that one. And then I'm just going to cut my yarn and pull the yarn through. As you can see, it's not necessarily the same at the corners, but that's all right. Like if you don't finish a whole set of 4 stitches, you know, single, 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 single with picot, then that's all right. Like you can just feel free to modify it as you go and as you see fit. The underarm edging starts in the middle of the underarm, so you have to find where the middle is. For example, here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shells, so I'm going to go in the middle of the middle one, which is this guy. And I'm just going to put my hook in there and attach my yarn. Pull through, and then I'm going to chain 1. See? And start single crocheting along the underarm. 1, then I know that there's a chain in there, and then if you see here, there is my single crochet that I made. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you pay attention to where your stitches are, you will find where to put your hook. And then there's another chain. So I'm just wrapping the whole chain, and especially because it's around the underarm, like it won't be very obvious if you skipped a chain or something, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But it's very clear that in each shell you have the middle one, and then 1 at each side of the shell, and then 1 where the single crochet is in between the shells. So try to follow that pattern so that you don't skip any shells. This is my last one, and then this is my corner stitch. Now we'll continue single crocheting all the way. And now we're going to work on the side of your work, and you're going to continue single crocheting along these rows of lace. Now you have to remember that on the side, single crochet stitches are worth 1 stitch, and then double crochets are 2 stitches. So I will do 1 at the top and 1 on the post of the stitch. So I will show you how you do it. This is a double crochet, so I will do 1 at the top, and then this is the post of the stitch. Now if you wrap the whole post, you will get a little hole there, and I don't really like doing that. So what I do is I find the stitch and I kind of split it in half. I split it open. It's not super easy, and I make sure that there are 2 strands of yarn on my hook. So I've gone through 2 strands of yarn, and then I will work my stitch right there. So this makes it very, very neat and clean, and you don't get that extra hole in there. And you will continue until your pattern says. So some sizes will have to go all the way to the corner stitch of the yoke, which is this one, and other sizes will go a little bit further or before then. Now that we are at the yoke, we're going to start with our shells. So I'm going to yarn over to make a double crochet. I'm going to skip the next stitch, and in the next stitch I'm going to make a 7 double crochet shell. Okay, there are my 7 single double crochets. I'm going to skip the next stitch and single crochet in the next one. And I will repeat that all along the edge of the yoke. Alright, so I am almost at the end of my yoke. Now, as you can see here, I have 2 stitches left. Depending on the size, you will have more or less stitches, and that's fine. Just, you know, do what you can to make one more shell fit, and if you don't think you can fit one more, then don't worry about it. So I'm going to do one more right here. And since I need to skip one stitch, I'm going to go to the next one. So just kind of forget about that one right there and go to the next post of that double crochet. And now that I'm here, I'm just going to continue single crocheting along the side of the lace. Remembering that double crochet stitches require 2 stitches and single crochet stitches require 1. This is also one of those things that you don't necessarily need to do it exactly like I do it. If you feel like you need an extra stitch because your fabric is being too scrunched up, then feel free to do that. So far I've worked an edging all along the side of the back of the armhole, and here I have reached the bottom of the underarm. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did at the beginning. So I'm going to work one in the corner just to close that off a little bit, and then I'm going to go along and single crochet on those underarm chains. Okay, now that I have reached the beginning of my round, I will simply slip stitch to join the round. And I'm going to pull this to tighten, and that will fasten it off. And that's it. There is the edging. And this is what it looks like finished. So you can see the little ruffles around the yoke, and you have the picot edging going on at the neckline, and also a very neat single crochet finish along the lace around the armhole.
Alright, well that's that. You've made it. You've made your Bougainvillea top, and I hope you love it as much as I love mine. And if you end up making it, please tag me on your Instagram post or Facebook. And if you don't follow me on Instagram or on YouTube, please subscribe and please follow me to not only support me as a maker, but also so that you don't miss out on great things that are happening in the next few weeks. And yeah, thank you so much for working on one of my designs, and thank you so much for being a great supporter. I hope you enjoy it and love it as much as I do. Have a great day. Bye-bye.